EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome in, everybody, to a Wednesday edition of Birds 365. Got a great show planned for everybody today, October 2nd, everybody. Moving right along. That's John McMullen, the #1 Eagles beat reporter in town. Give him a follow at JF McMullen. I'm your host, Zander Krause. Give me a follow at Real Zander. I will have two great guests on today, and Mike Gill and Brandon Lee Gouton, as we always do on Wednesdays. Johnny Mac, how you doing on this Wednesday morning, brother?
I'm doing well. Bye week Wednesday typically would be the big practice day of the week, but the Eagles early bye week, some good, some bad. I still think it's more bad than good. I don't like early bye weeks, but probably because of the circumstance, probably a little bit better than normal for this team.
Definitely with the injuries, obviously, you're talking about key guys, John. You know, it's not we're talking about majorly key players to this football team. So that is the beauty of this bye week, but no doubt about it. They got a 13-game run, John, coming out of the bye. So that's a lot. That's a lot of football on the back end compared to what they have on the front. A couple things I want to talk about here, John. In the open, I know the coordinator spoke yesterday, but I want to go to the Darius Slay stuff because it's all over my social media feed. It's all over everywhere. And we talked about it a little bit yesterday, but we didn't get too in depth with it. I'll ask you just to start your thoughts on that whole saga that's going on right now. Slay put up a video responding to some of the criticism coming from Eagles fans. Your thoughts on that whole situation right now and how it's unfolding. I will say, John, before I don't want to tip the question too much, but it does look like it could be a problem inside the locker room when you have a guy like CJ Gardner-Johnson who gives a crap about all of that stuff. Your thoughts on how that's unfolding?
Yeah, I mean, I look at it, I guess, from the organizational perspective, and if I were the organization, and they do, and they constantly preach to these guys to stay off social media as much as possible. No good is going to come from it, but they're grown men, and they do what they want, and it's a generation I mentioned yesterday that grew up with social media. It's very important to them. And you have these circumstances. I do know, like the coaches would, pull out their hair. In my, my case, I don't have any. From their perspective, they want to correct technique problems, tackling problems. They want to figure out what's up with the slow starts. And Nick's on WIP getting asked about stupid social media bullshit. So it's frustrating from that perspective, but you got to deal with it. And yeah, it's a problem. And the worst part of it is it's a self-inflicted problem, obviously. Yeah. Look, I've been doing this for a long time at a much lower level. I put out a tweet there yesterday. I was talking I got so much shit for it. It's unbelievable. And the mute button goes on overdrive. These guys, it's like times a million. They're getting, if they play poorly, if they or fans perceive them to play poorly, they get a lot of what's on social media. And the first, you want to defend yourself. That's human nature. And it takes a lot of discipline not to defend yourself. But you know what doesn't take a lot of discipline? Don't do it in the first place. Just ignore it. Easier said than done, as I said. I'm sure that's all the Eagles can do is preach it. Ignore it, get away from it, stop it, mute it, block it, do whatever you have to do. But, then you have these guys with podcasts, like Slay has this podcast, and they see the success of Jason Kelce, and they get this engagement, and they get this popularity. And there's a business part of it as well. Their branding, so to speak, is part of it as well. But I do think specifically with Slay and Micah Parsons and the fact that they're friends, that's one of those things that fans just don't like.
Yeah, and I can understand the point of like you got to get over that because Slay's going to be buddy. It's just a new league, but why go there with your teammate? And I'm not even talking about whether CJ Gardner-Johnson, is in the right or wrong because the dude just does talk a lot. It's easy fodder for Michael Parsons to go on his podcast and rip into CJ. I mean, he's a big target. He makes himself a big target. But doesn't Darius Slay, as a leader of the football team, have to understand where he is with certain player? I get it. Slay likes Micah. I'm not even criticizing them for that, but you're a leader, dude. Now CJ Gardner-Johnson's sharing over on his social account, damn, ... And the cryptic messages.
Well, the cryptic. I don't think Slay is the problem here. I'll put it that way. But from the standpoint of it's ironic because Micah gets crap from Cowboys fans because of his respect for Lane Johnson in the past and him talking up Lane Johnson, how good Lane Johnson is. And he gets the same thing from his side. So from the standpoint, as Slay has said, he knew Micah before he even got to the Cowboys. They work out together. Their families know each other. I mean, this is like, that part you got to get over if you're a fan that they're friends. And if Micah plays with the Eagles, they'll get over it real quickly. That's probably not going to happen.
Yeah, I just thought it was low for him to talk about, especially a guy who has a side business on social media and who, obviously has a history with the city in the past in terms of going at them on social media. The dude cares. These modern, John, we talk about modern players all the time. We talk about it with the coach.
Yeah, but what did he say that was bad about CJ?
I don't think Slay said anything wrong. He's right. If CJ Gardner-Johnson going to talk shit, eventually you're going to have to back it up.
That's all he said.
I know. But
that's all he said.
Read the room.
It's become a cliche, but it's the truest cliche in the history of the world is control what you can control. And these players hear it a million times plus one over the NFL, over the course of the NFL year. It's good advice for people in their everyday lives as well. Like he was asked a question, he answered the question, and he didn't say anything badly. And, the perception is because of one word and ... it's a problem.
It's bad optics
because
they're laughing,
because of the other guy. Like you can't control if he takes that as disrespectful. I think, if you got 100 people, and don't get me wrong, there's a bunch of Eagles fans that see it as disrespectful as well. But if you take 100 people that don't have skin in the fight, hey, is this disrespectful? The vast majority that don't have mental health problems is going to say, no, it's not disrespectful. So you can't control how other people take things. However, you can control not saying anything.
Right. And that's where I am.
And if I were Slay, I wouldn't go on Micah's podcast and vice versa during the season, off season, have at it. I mean, to me, that's just common sense. But I grew up in a different era when there were real rivalries. I always talk about, there are no real rivalries anymore.
Yeah. You heard Shady McCoy talking about it yesterday a little bit.
Yeah, the Sixers and Celtics wanted to kill each other back in the day, and I bring it up all the time. Julius Erving strangling Larry Bird after a fight. They legit had legit angst. Even a generation ago, the Ray Lewis generation, the Steelers and the Ravens were the best rivalry, and some people still think it is, and it probably still is if you're rating rivalries. But it's not. There's not that amongst the fan bases, it's the same. And I think there's a disconnect there. And, they want their guys to hate their guys, so to speak. It's just not that way anymore.
But that doesn't answer to why he would be. And I get what you're saying. I know they're going to be friends. It's the modern era. But the optics of it are brutal. And Slay, as a captain and an older player, should understand that. He's from the outsider view. Forget what.
Well, he's the same.
He's laughing what is the difference? Johnson's name gets brought up on an opposing player's podcast. The optics of that for CJ Gardner is not good. He feels disrespected, which is why many people are saying he's disrespected because the optics of it are brutal. Now, I get it. Perception's not always reality, but in social media world, it is. And I think that's where Slay's going to
I mean, I find it ironic that people don't go to never go to the root of the problem. Never go to the root of the problem. Like, why is the guy talking so much shit who's not playing that well? Not that Slay's playing great, but he's playing a heck of a lot better than to somebody who feels like he was disrespected that wasn't disrespected. So, I mean, if you bring it, to me, he's telling the truth. If you bring it the way CJ brings it from a vocal standpoint, and you don't back it up, and you're getting all hurt about people clapping back,
I get it.
I mean, why don't you shut it down?
Yeah, but it's an optics mess for Slay to be laughing about a teammate after getting blown out. Remember, he also tweeted out the career stats, which, you know, people had a problem with that as well. It's like you're piling on.
Has anybody? Well, he said the career stats thing is just human nature. He's got in himself. He admitted that fans got to him, and that's why I say to him, and I will say to him, because he will listen to you. You know, hey, you know, you probably shouldn't do that. You should. You not that he's looking for any advice, and he's going to do what he wants to do. The other guy's not going to have a conversation, not going to have an engagement, not going to have any of that. So, look, there's a good guy here. And it's the good guy that everybody thinks is the bad guy who's trying to uplift people. And I say it all the time. I tell the Devin Allen story all the time. You know, when he first got here as a track star trying to go back to football, didn't know anybody, just happened to be in the off season running in the Penn relays because he was still doing the track stuff as well. And Slay gets his teammates together to go support his new teammate that he barely knows. That's the guy he is. That's why, and people with the C and all this stuff, his teammates voted him a captain. His teammates voted him a captain. Not Nick Sirianni, not the coaching staff, not the coaching staff. And if they want to pull the C from his chest, like you all want to pull the C from the chest, they will. But they won't because they love the guy. So that to me is overall. That to me is a non-question. But again, when you should be talking about, hey, they missed 15 stinking tackles. Hey, they you know, what's going on with
John? You do that right after you do that. This is what the optics are about your teammate after your defense stinks on ice. That's part of it as well. I think that fans are upset with. And I think
fans are upset. Let's be honest.
I think the bigger issue, John, is this might be somewhat of a fracture in the locker room.
Let's be honest. Right? Well, let's be honest. Fans are upset because they lost. If the exact same circumstance happened and they won, they wouldn't give a shit. So that's the only reason they're upset. Now, if Slay played poorly in a win and he clapped back, that, you know, you'd see a little bit and that'd be it.
Yeah.
And nobody would give two shits. So I'm not buying that anybody's upset about this and this is granted and this is going. And if there's a fracture in the locker room, we all know where that fracture's coming from. And it ain't Darius Slay.
Fair enough. Do you think it was wrong?
And by the way, Howie Roseman deserves the criticism for reintroducing something to the locker room. He's the one who deserves the criticism. And you should have paid Xavier McKinney $8 million more if you had to.
Yeah, well, I would agree with the assessment that CJ Gardner-Johnson hasn't been a good football player for us this year. But do you agree that it was a poor judgment in that moment from Slay, optic wise?
Oh, yeah. The minute he steps in front of the podcast microphone, it's a poor judgment. But he wants to have his own brand. He wants to get his own message out. And this is part good and part bad.
Yeah.
Look, people run a million different directions. I said I got a much smaller range of people than Slay, and they just say shit that I don't say, and they say like it's a fact. And you either clap back like Slay did, or you ignore it and move on to the next one. It's a bad. I would encourage any athlete to stop it while they're playing, but that, again, there's a business side to it.
Right.
If you're just worried about the pure football aspect, stop it. But they're not. They're worried about other things. They're worried about the business aspect. And I get that. And that's why you can't go and say, stop it, if you're the Philadelphia Eagles. And you can't ban them from doing
because
it.
They're setting themselves up for life after football and all these things. But I do think that's my only issue, is that I think Slay, as a leader of the football team, needs to read that room better. Whether it's on CJ Gardner-Johnson or not is beside the point.
Well, he shouldn't be on Micah's podcast in the season.
Go against your player. He knows that kind of guy CJ Gardner-Johnson is. Now, I'm not saying Slay is the problem. I'm saying he created an issue that could have easily been avoided as a captain.
An unforced error. But, if somebody's got a way to stop all these players, not just the Eagles, all these players from getting on social media or playing video games or getting on Twitch and talking what they want to do, but by all means, contact the office, because they'd love to hear it.
Right.
Other than shutting down free speech, which, hey, maybe people wanted to, judging by what's going on in this country. Other than that, and saying, all right, put it in your contract, you can't do this stuff. I don't know how you stop it. But yeah, every single one of them. And it's happened multiple times, whether it's A.J. Brown clapping back against these morons, whether it's Kenny Gainwell from the locker room clapping back, whether it's Slay, whether it's CJ, on and on and on and on. It happens again and again and again and again. And it's going to happen again and again and again and again, because people get attacked, and their first human nature response to that is to clap back. And then you have this issue, well, you shouldn't do that. How about focusing on the trolls that attack players? How about focusing on those losers? How about focusing on the 57 idiots who treat, every time somebody's injured, they say, oh, he's made of glass. How about those morons?
Yeah, but they don't have it. They don't fracture the locker room like Slay has the ability to.
I get what you're saying. They fracture the locker room with their actions. I'm saying, if you have a solution to stopping players from using social media, I'm all ears.
Oh no, there's no solution to that. Which is why I think, as a leader,
the Eagles would be all ears, other than be Jalen Hurts and ignore it and don't do it. And people don't like Jalen. Some people don't like Jalen's because he's too close to the vest, because he's not engaging, and because he's not, you can't win, Zander. You can't win. I mean, how much crap does Jalen Hurts get for being the way he is? When he loses, when they're losing, when he wins, oh, he's stoic, he's unflappable, he's so even keeled. It's a great thing. When they lose, what the hell? The guy shows no emotion. You can't win. You can't win. And that's why Nick Sirianni bended it all off. Devin White, I should have added Devin White with Levante David. And Nick bended it all off, because you can't win. Other than preaching your players, which the Eagles do, I know that for a fact, stay away from it. But they don't.
Yeah, they don't. My only point would be, Slay's got to read the room, man. As a cat, I get what you're saying, but Slay's got to read the room, man. CJ Gardner, I mean, your defense is struggling. CJ Gardner-Johnson is an emotional guy, cares a lot about that stuff. You got to read the room better there. So that would be my one pushback. Real quick, John, let's read the super chat. Chip 2, thank you, brother. Let's go to the super chat real quick before we get to Mike Gill coming up 3 minutes here on Birds. He says, J-Mac, I watched the All-22, and yes, the scheme has guys rotating late for the sake of disguise, but we are, in fact, playing some man coverage, and guys are just blowing coverages, missing tackles. Coach can't tackle for you. Your thoughts?
Yeah, well, yeah, I've been saying that for years. Now, even again, subjective. Most of what the Eagles do is zone with man principles. So a lot of times it'll look like man, but it's really zone. But that that's where you get the 88%. Basically, they're in some type of and Vic explained that to a little extent in that it's basically man principles in the zone that you have, which is very complicated and is susceptible to creating blown coverages, which you've seen over the years with this defense. But beyond that, yeah, I mean, the tackling was a big issue. 15 tackles. So one had 12, one had 11, one had 16. The Eagles in-house, 15 missed tackles. And that's the only number that matters, their in-house number. And Vic confirmed it as 15. You're going to lose if you lose 15 tackles on a given game day. You're going to lose. So that's got to improve. And the ironic thing is they're not even close to being the worst tackling team in the NFL, which surprised me.
So did you buy then you bought the excuse, not the excuse, but you bought his explanation as the tackles.
No, I'm the one who asked him the question. He didn't use it as an excuse.
Well, just because I remember you saying yesterday you thought that's the route he was going to go.
Yeah. And he said, I'll pull it up real quick. I don't want to misquote him, but I'm the one who asked him the question, and he said, he basically I didn't know if he was understanding because he's giving me that quizzical Big Fangio look sometimes, and I'm basically said I didn't know if it was getting through, but it was getting through, and basically. And I'm looking for it. Can't find it, of course. Anyway, let me search for it. But while I do that,
if you want, we'll get to Mike Gill.
Yeah, well, I'll look for it and I'll try to bring it up when Mike is here. But yeah, he basically did not. He said, yeah, that's a big part of it, but. That said, the coverage wasn't good enough. So it wasn't like he just immediately defaulted to it.
Right.
Which is what was using that as an excuse. He said that the coverage wasn't good. And I did find it. So he says, yeah, I follow you I didn't get it if he was getting the question. The answer is yes, to a degree. A lot of the bigger gains came after missed tackles. So that would have been a major plus for us if we could have tackled better. But still, we've got to be tighter in coverage too. So he wasn't using it as an excuse, but I do think it's much better. I mean, people aren't having as much problems with the coverage if those underneath throws and you're making the tackle right away. There's still completions. And as we know with the Jonathan Gannon era, people are still going to complain. But if you tackle, it's going to look a hell of a lot better than if you don't tackle.
Right. No doubt about that. Let's get to our commercial break. Chip Tooth, appreciate the super chat, man. Thank you for checking in. A great viewer. I know you're always in here. So thank you, brother, for the support of the channel. Let's get to our commercial break. I see my man Mike Gill in the green room. We'll talk to Mike Gill coming up next on Birds 365.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.